first this week saw a revival of the scandal surrounding an alleged CIA secret prison in Poland, something the country's officials have always strongly denied existed. The first charges have reportedly been brought against the country's former intelligence chief for allowing the site. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by former CIA officer Ray McGovern. Ray, well, as a former CIA officer, you're the perfect person to ask. What do you reckon went on behind the scenes in this prison?
Well, the orders went out from President Bush and Vice President Cheney that these high-value suspects were to be given enhanced interrogation techniques, and that, of course, meant that it needed a secure place to do them. The story broke in our press many years ago, but not until now have the Poles pretty much admitted that a small site up there was condoned by the Secret Service of Poland, by their intelligence people, and by their top officials. Now, how it came to be, of course, there's probably some money that passed hands. I would be very interested in the results of this investigation to see how much the head of intelligence was able to coup from this kind of thing. But the general thing is just very awkward for me. If you don't realize, I used to be an expert on the Soviet Union, and these are the kinds of things Stalin did. And these are the kinds of things the Nazis did in World War II. And so it's very, very awkward for me to be talking about cruel, inhuman, and degrading punishment, whether or not waterboarding was included, by my own government.
But is there evidence, let me just ask you, is there evidence to suggest that that sort of practice did indeed prevent further terrorist attacks? Bearing in mind, of course, it was set up after the 9/11 attacks.
Well, that is a major question, and I would give your listeners a choice of whom to believe. Now, President Bush and Vice President Cheney said, oh, yes, it did. But the head of U.S. Army Intelligence said, and I quote, "No good information is ever made available through harsh interrogation techniques. History has shown that, and the hard experience of the last 5 years, difficult years, also shows that." He said that in 2006, the morning before President Bush got up across the river and tried to defend these techniques. Everyone knows torture does not yield reliable information. Now, if you want unreliable information, torture works like a charm. If you want to prove, in quotes, that Saddam Hussein had ties with Al-Qaeda, well, you know, if you can't do it yourself, you give those people over to the Egyptians. They know how to make people confess. And that's precisely what went on. In the very early parts of the torture regime, the essential item of information they wanted was some sort of indication, whether it was true or not, that Saddam Hussein was somehow related to 9/11. And they got that by sending this fellow Ali to Cairo to be tortured.
Ray, not only was this centre set up and broke Polish law, it contravened the Polish constitution, also talks that it could indeed be a case that could be referred to the European Court of Human Rights for the very reasons you've just been talking about earlier, about the alleged torture. CIA agents and Polish agents, should they be held accountable? From your position as a former CIA agent, should the personnel, perhaps be facing trial?
Well, there is a precedent here. It's called the Nuremberg Tribunal. It is not sufficient to say, I was only following orders. That doesn't work, okay? Nuremberg said that doesn't work. So from the very highest officials, and my hat is off to the Poles, I have to say kudos to Poland for finally facing up to this problem and holding people accountable. Accountability is a noun that has been missing from the vocabulary of Washington officials and even jurists. So, if the Poles do this, maybe we could all do this.
All right, just briefly, to what extent does the US use other countries for its extraordinary rendition programs now?
Well, now is a puzzle. The U.S. administration has asserted the right to continue to do rendition, but I have no indication that the kind of abuses that happened under the Cheney-Bush regime are continuing anywhere else in the world.
Former CIA officer Ray McGovern, thank you very much indeed for joining us live there from Washington, D.C. Great to hear your thoughts. Thank you.